Today I wanted to talk about the concept of white privilege and why I think it's stupid, dumb, idiotic, and racist. I think it's a way for people to shout down other people based on their skin color, which is what I think a lot of people are against in the first place, so apparently the irony is lost on them. I've seen this article or journal or essay or whatever you want to call it surface around quite a bit lately. It was written in the 1991 by Peggy McIntosh, and she was apparently a feminist, one of the first third-wave feminists, I guess, which is the one that, is causing a lot of the problems now. But yeah, she wrote this article called White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, and right away, invisible is in the title, meaning intangible, meaning is there really anything there? Well, we're going to say it is because it's the virtue signaling thing to do. Okay, so this, I'm going to pull an article up on the screen, but basically the first point on here is, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. Now, this is a list of 50 supposed privileges that people do have, white people do have. I think most of them are bullshit, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to go through the first 10, and then a couple more that I chose that were my favorites. But basically, I'm going to read it again. It says, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. Now, this is entirely dependent on what country you're in. This isn't exclusive to white people. Right? If you're in Japan, you're going to be in the company of mostly Japanese people. Mostly people of that skin tone, the oriental skin tone. That's the same with Canada, where I live. I go outside and it's 80% white. That's just the way it is. It's not racist. It doesn't give me an advantage. I don't get a socioeconomic advantage from that. I don't get a medical advantage from that. There's nothing I get from being surrounded by mostly people of my own race. Number 2, I can avoid spending time with people whom I was trained to mistrust and who have learned to mistrust my kind or me. Where was this taught? Because I don't remember learning this in school. I was taught to respect everyone equally. Actually, it was shoved down my throat fairly forcefully ever since I can remember. And I went to school in the 90s when this was written, and that was also the case. So I'm not really sure what this point is trying to get at, other than claim there's a problem where there is none. Number 3, if I should need to move, I can be pretty sure of renting or purchasing housing in an area which I can afford and in which I would want to live. This isn't a question of race, this is a question of financial and economic responsibility. I mean, if you are looking to buy a house in an area that you'd like to live, the only thing getting in the way of that is your financial situation. And that is entirely dependent on personal responsibility. There are far too many variables to consider in this situation to blame that on white privilege or race, alright? Number 4, I can be pretty sure that my neighbors in such a location will be neutral or pleasant to me. Now you'll notice during this video that she says, I can be pretty sure a lot of the time. That's not very scientifically accurate. It's being pretty sure, right? I mean, this article is largely based on nothing. The other thing in this statement is that she said neutral. So having your neighbors be neutral to you is a privilege all of a sudden. I'm sorry, when did being ignored or my neighbors not caring about me, since when was that a privilege? Right? I don't think that's exclusive to any specific race. I think I'm not sure how I have an advantage by my neighbors acting neutral to me. 5, if I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured that I will not be followed or harassed. Harassed? No. Followed? Maybe. But then you look at how criminal statistics breaks down. So if you're talking about a black person, black people statistically commit more crimes, and therefore some people may be more wary of them. Now, I'm not saying that's okay, but I am saying that the reason for that is not based on nothing and based on, a racist white privilege sort of thing. 6, I can turn on the television or open to the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented. Again, it depends on what country you're in. If I open a Jamaican newspaper, it's going to be Jamaican people. If I open a Canadian newspaper, it's actually pretty diverse compared to other countries. And by the way, is this even a privilege? Like, I could just as easily say to someone, You don't have to worry about a tan in the summer and claim that that's their privilege. It doesn't mean there's a moral or human rights crime being committed to have a certain advantage, like I'm invisible in a snowstorm. That doesn't make me morally superior, or there's no moral crime being committed there. Number 7, when I'm told about our national heritage or about civilization, I'm shown that people of my color made it what it is. Well, and with respect to Canada, that is true. I mean, European settlers were the ones that came here and started the society that we know today. Obviously, it's developed quite a bit, but it's not a lie to say white Europeans were the ones who started here. And half the time in grade 5 history class, we were learning about First Nations, so they're not ignored. They're an integral part to Canadian history. 8. I can be sure that my children will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence of their race. What does that even mean? Is this article trying to insinuate that we don't acknowledge the existence of other races because they weren't an integral part of Canada's history? No one said that they weren't. But just because they're underrepresented doesn't mean that they don't exist. I'm not really quite sure what this claim is trying to... I don't know. Number 9, if I want to, I can be pretty sure of finding a publisher for this piece on white privilege. Can you prove that an Asian or black person wouldn't be able to find someone who would publish this? There's black authors and Asian authors and Hispanic authors everywhere. I don't think that's a claim you can make widespread like that. And if anything, in this day and age on social media, it's actually quite the opposite. I mean, Twitter lets people like Isra Kagali and Black Lives Matter activists make death threats to white people on social media, but bans Milo Yiannopoulos for giving a scathing review of Ghostbusters. I think there's a pretty hefty, double standard there. Number 10, I can be pretty sure of having my voice heard in a group in which I'm the only member of my race. Is there any proof of that? What is this claim based off of anyway? I mean, this could be entirely on a person's subjective experiences. Because, every group that I've worked with, everyone gets an equal say. So instead of taking the time to go over all 50 of these, because I do find most of them to be pretty weak, and you gotta think if they put those ones as the top 10, or the first 10 listed, that the rest that follow are going to be pretty weak too. So instead I'm just going to choose a few ones I'd like to address specifically. Number 12, I can go into a music shop and count on finding the music of my race represented, into a supermarket and find the staple foods which fit with my cultural traditions, into a hairdresser shop and find someone who can cut my hair. So this one is, again, like most of these, based on culture. Of course I'll be able to find Canadian food at a Canadian supermarket. If I went to Jamaica and they didn't have poutine, should I be offended in claiming racism and claiming discrimination? No. The demand isn't there. I'm not sure if leftists are familiar with the basic concept of supply and demand, but if the demand's not there, then there will be no supply. So if you have 0.5% of the Canadian population that's Jamaican, don't be surprised if they don't have stewed peas at every friggin' restaurant in the region. 17. I can talk with my mouth full and not have people put this down to my color. I can honestly say I've never looked at someone talking with their mouth full and thought, wow, Latinos are gross. No, I look at them as an individual and I say, hey, close your mouth when you're eating, you pig. That's all there is to it. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, yellow, red, doesn't matter. It's not a race thing. Number 26, I can easily buy posters, postcards, picture books, greeting cards, dolls, toys, and children's magazines featuring people of my race. Now, every textbook that I've bought in the last 10 years has a black person, an Asian person, a Caucasian person, a Hispanic person, with an equally split male-female ratio, and more often than not, a person in a wheelchair. So I gotta claim this as false. There's no way that our pictures and mainstream things aren't diverse enough. We're always about the inclusivity here. Number 37, I can be pretty sure of finding people who would be willing to talk with me and advise me about my next steps professionally. Again, notice she says pretty sure here. She's not exactly working with a lot of facts or statistics. Last night I was pretty sure I only had 2 beers. Really had like 8, but look, if you work at a university as a career advisor and you don't agree to help a student solely based on their skin color, your ass is fired. If they find you guilty based on a violation of the Ontario Human Rights Code, for example, your career's pretty much over. And don't put it past them, they will do it. I mean, there's been talk of banning Halloween costumes because they've been triggering or offensive to people. Number 33, we're going backwards here. I'm not made acutely aware that my shape, bearing, or body odor will be taken as a reflection on my race. Now this one just sounds like an excuse for bad BO, because it doesn't matter what race you are. If you show up to a job interview and you smell like crap, the interviewer's not going to be impressed by you at all, and they're certainly not going to blame it on your race. They're going to blame it on you as an individual, and that's why you're not hired. Number 46, I can choose blemish cover or bandages in flesh color and have them more or less match my skin. Was this really that important that it needed to be on the top 50 list of privileges white people have? Again, all of these points can be, almost all of these points can be debunked by supply and demand. Again, a white person can make no use of a darker colored blemish cover. And if, Canada is 80% white, then of course you're only going to find 20% product that covers darker skin. It's not a race thing, it's a supply and demand thing, and that's capitalism for you. It's not racist. And last but most certainly least, number 50. I'll feel welcomed and normal in the usual walks of public life, institutional and social. So I guess it's just the big wrap up at the end of our article here. Look, you can claim systemic racism all you want. You can claim systemic bias. You can claim systemic discrimination. But if you can't point me to a single law or policy that discriminates against you for your skin color, then you have no case. If anything, affirmative action ensures that white people have a disadvantage. I'm not claiming that, white people are disadvantaged in the system that we currently have. But I am saying that when people claim that the system's racist towards black people, towards minorities, it's just not true. If you have a higher chance of getting into law school than I do based on your skin color, if we have the exact same grades, exact same accomplishments, I'd say that's discrimination. And that's what happens. If you are a visible minority in the States, at least, you have a higher chance of getting into law school with the same grades as someone who is a straight white male, basically. And to that same effect, a lot of what we see on university campuses, especially the trigger warning, safe space, microaggression culture, a lot of these people create these safe space groups where white people aren't even allowed to join. Right? They claim that they've been so oppressed by white people that they don't even allow them into their own groups, but that is what racism is. I mean, if you're discriminating against someone based on their skin tone, not based on their ideas, not based on what they bring to the table, but their skin tone, then you're no better than what you're claiming to be fighting against. It's ridiculous that these are even allowed to exist. What I'm trying to say here is I think the concept of white privilege has been used to debate in a really lazy way. I'm a person that I like to debate about things, and I like when my opponent's prepared to debate about things too. I think if you have two different perspectives, two well thought out and logical perspectives on an issue, it can be really productive to talk about them. But what I see happening these days is, in general, conservative people are the ones that come up with the arguments and defend their facts, and it's the leftists that come in and say, well, you're just racist or sexist or xenophobic, and the argument's over. There's no defense against that. The only thing you can say is, no, I'm not. They're not going to believe you when you say that. So this whole concept has just been a way to silence the opposition without really doing any thinking of their own. So anyways, I guess you can't really call this video a debunk, as there wasn't a whole lot to debunk based on the fact that these claims were made on false premises. But I hope you thought the commentary was at least thought-provoking, and I kind of felt like it was something that I needed to address.